But in fact, with us to talk about their contest to wrench control of the district in which this station is are two of the three candidates who are involved in the race. Last week we talked with Victor Lake, the Senate candidate. This week it's my pleasure to welcome to the broadcast the people who are running for both of the House seats in Senate District 51 rather, and we are talking this hour with Brad Gerten, who's running for House District 51A.
Correct.
And Pat Hammond, who is running for 51B, the B side.
Hello there.
Great to have you both on the broadcast here today. Glad we could. This is kind of a point of pride for us here at the station. We did our little bit to help flip this district all Republican in 2010, and we've been fighting to get it back ever since here. And we're certainly got our fingers crossed for the two of you. So let's talk with both of you first. Let's start on the B side. Pat Hammond, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a 37-year Eagan resident.
Okay.
I am a. I'm sorry. I am an Apple developer. I have my own business. I do iOS programming.
Okay.
I am also the director of contemporary worship and music.
Okay.
At my church, River Hills United Methodist Church.
Okay.
In Burnsville, and I'm also a professional actor.
Okay.
So all three help to keep me busy, and now that I'm running, I'm really busy.
Absolutely. And as a UX designer, I just have to have you make sure you have a word with the folks at Apple about their rejection of skeuomorphism in UI design, because I think it was a huge mistake. And this whole adoption of the un-UI is just a communist conspiracy. I'm fairly well convinced. We can discuss this after the broadcast. On the A side, on a less geeky front, perhaps we don't know where this is going to go. We don't do any screening these interviews. Brad Gerten joins us, running for 51A. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Brad.
Well, I'm not an app developer, but I'm an app user quite a bit.
Well, good. We closed the circle here.
Yes. I'm a Burnsville resident, have been for several years. Graduated from Burnsville High School several years ago. I'm a military veteran, 22 years. I retired after 22 years of active duty and National Guard service, served in Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan. So a couple of years ago, I finally hung up the boots. I'm a probation officer currently in Hennepin County. I've worked for Hennepin County for almost 12 years now. I've been a probation officer for 4 of them. And in my free time, I like to officiate sports. I'm a high school and youth hockey referee and baseball, softball umpire. That's me. And
absolutely, yeah. No, we'll talk about that when we come back. But let's go to Pat here now.
Okay.
So, what you seem like a fairly sane, well-adjusted person. What prompted you to run for the Minnesota House?
Well, I've been noticing that there's been a great decline in the business climate in this state, and I really would like to see that reversed. Especially when it comes to small business.
Yeah.
I think every small business owner that I've been talking to lately, just to make sure that I've done my homework, to make sure I'm on solid ground here as far as an issue goes, and each one of them has been saying regulations, taxation has been killing them. Nobody's talking about expanding. They're all talking about surviving.
Right. That's the thing I love to tell. I mean, Democrats love to say, look at this fantastic business climate we have in Minnesota. Look at all the Fortune 1000 companies.
Yeah.
To which I respond, yeah, this is a great place to be a CEO. If you're the CEO
Yes.
and you've got a 6-figure salary, this is, having the Guthrie around and the Ordway and all the amenities of life in a city like Minneapolis and St. Paul, it's a great place to be a CEO. It's not such a great place to be a freelance developer or run a flower shop or a lot of small or run a machine shop. It's getting tough out there.
Well, it's I think in their effort to try and try to get the money out of the big business, through the taxation and the regulations and everything, they forget about the small business. And they're just getting killed because the same regulations that apply to the big business apply to the small business.
So you've been hearing this from your business, and of course you are a small businessman,
yes,
obviously. So what was it that pushed you over the edge? I mean, something you've been thinking about for a while, or something you woke up and said, boom, I've got to run for office? Or
yes, I think this is something that's been neglected, something that needs to be said, something that needs to be brought out. I don't think it has been. I think it kind of, the small business owner, the typical politician will just pass over it and say, "Oh well, it's okay for them."
Yeah.
No, it's not okay. And you have to remember, Apple, Google, Microsoft, all these big companies that established the technologies that we're using today and that is providing a lot of the employment today, They started as one-man, two-man shops.
That's right.
And if you kill the small businesses in Minnesota, you're going to kill your future, because that's mainly where all your innovation comes from, is from those small businesses, from those hungry individuals that want to start something and make it grow. They just can't get it to grow because of the climate.
We'll come back to that in just a moment here. Brad Gerten, you come at it from a different perspective. You work for the beast. You're deep in its belly. You work for the government. What prompted you to come out against, some would say, the hand that feeds you, Brad?
Well, I like to think of myself as one of the essential employees of what is necessary for government to run it. Your public safety, that type of
Correct.
stuff. It really
one of government's absolute legitimate jobs.
Exactly.
Right. I'm just busting on you.
I understand. I totally understand.
You're not a small businessman. You've been in the military. You work for law enforcement. What prompted you to get into the race?
Big thing is the Minnesota budget. It just keeps increasing, and what are we getting for those budget increases? Just more programs.
And a Viking stadium.
That too. That's one of the things that are. You're asking for people to dig deeper down in their pockets, and what is that really making Minnesota better? People might argue that it is, but
is it government's job to be building stadiums? I mean,
exactly.
Keeping the public safe is one thing. Keeping the public entertained, not so much, Brad Gerten.
Absolutely. And so my big thing is roads and bridges, having a strong education with local control. Let the local school districts control what's going on there rather than the dictates from you're going to have some oversight from the state, but the federal government involved in local education should not be there. I'm all about having lower taxes. The Metropolitan Council needs to be reformed, go back to what their original intent was. They should not be dictating to cities on how they develop or redevelop their land.
Oh, yeah, and that's been a huge issue here in Senate District 51, the Lebanon Hills Park issue that I've been following over this last year here. I mean, the Metropolitan Council and the feds essentially coming in and dictating to Egan and to Dakota County that they have to put a bunch of bike lanes, and not just bike lanes, but really wide swaths of wilderness cut out of Lebanon Hills Park to put in a regulation bike lane, because supposedly people are commuting via bike from Egan to downtown. Just not seeing it, gents. No. Pat Hammond, this is one that I've heard from, in particular, from citizens here in the Egan-Burnsville area about in particular. What
is so frustrating about that is that the Metropolitan Council is they're all appointed. They're not elected.
Right.
So if you have a mind to try to get around the legislative process to enact policies that you would not otherwise be able to enact, what you'll do is you'll go to the Metropolitan Council, who's not responsible to any voters.
They don't have to run for re-election.
No, they don't have to run for re-election, and they'll start instituting these policies, and you're going, hey, wait a minute, I didn't agree to that. Why is this happening? Well, they have no choice because the Metropolitan Council has been given such power.
As we found out through the Midway in St. Paul vis-a-vis our new trains. So, yes. Absolutely. It's public input is basically there for punching tickets, as was, by the way, the public input on Lebanon Hills Park.
Yes.
So you've heard about this. You guys are both out door knocking, and by the way, great day for it, huh? Bet you're glad to be in the basement right now. So what are you hearing? We talked about what you heard, Pat Hammond, from business people around the community. What are you hearing from people as you're door knocking?
Surprisingly, the same thing. It's jobs, economy. They're hearing too many anecdotal stories about people who have good, solid job records, and they're afraid that if they lose their job, they're not going to be able to get a job that is comparable or pays as well. Mm-hmm. They also have the anecdotal stories about the kid that comes out of college with $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 worth of student debt, being able to secure a job in order to reduce that debt, and they're starting to wonder. These kids are starting to wonder if they're ever going to get the life that their parents have had.
Living in St. Paul as I do, it's sometimes hard to remember that people in places like Egan and Burnsville have economic insecurity. But on the other hand, for a while there, Egan was kind of a Northwest Airlines company town, it seemed like, and Yeah, when Northwest started laying people off, we're talking a lot of career mechanics suddenly looking for jobs as gas station attendants, and that's a real factor of life. We're talking with Pat Hammond and Brad Gerten, running respectively for District 51B and 51A House. If you got any questions for them, please give us a call at 651-289-4488. You can also reach us on Twitter at hashtag NARN. When we come back, let's talk about goals in office and what you can expect as a voter in Eagan and Burnsville should we get Mr. Gerten and Mr. Hammond elected, which we hope you do.
And 51B. So, Brad, tell us about what you're telling people. What's your goal in office?
But I really want to concentrate on our infrastructure and go back to responsible spending. Roads and bridges, building new lanes, maintaining what we've got, not diverting money to boondoggles that are only going to benefit a very few in very select areas, and I'm specifically referring to light rail transit and those other mass transit projects. Buses is a good mode of mass transit that we have in the Twin Cities. We have it down here in the South Metro. We have the Red Line that starts down here, goes up to Mall of America. And if anything were to change within the next decade, 20, 30 years down the line, it's very easy to reroute those buses. Once you lay tracks down, they're there. It's not an easy rerouting, or it's an impossible rerouting of trains. You just got to build new tracks, and the cost is about 3 times as much per mile than it is for a lane mile, which means 2 lanes,
Well,
so
if you get
one
a
going each way.
bargain, I've heard of more like 10. But yeah, it's the prices are amazing. So how about you, Pat? Your goals when you get into office?
Well, since I've talked so much about small business, I would like to target small businesses as far as reducing some of the tax regulation and the overall regulation that are starting to choke the life out of small businesses. You have to realize that statewide the corporate tax is 9.8%. That's third highest in the nation. I'm not exactly sure why we need it that high. I would like to see that reduced. There are certain regulations that need to be addressed, and as while we're at it, one of the biggest regulations right now is is what you need to do in order to comply with the Obamacare mandates, which I think is one of the biggest job killers in our reduction in hours that employees face. Right now, businesses can't expand because the healthcare costs would go out the roof. It's also the cost of the healthcare is also such that there are some families that it becomes that they would rather pay the penalty than pay the get the insurance. So I think there's a if we could take a look at reducing the burdens from that. I think would go a long way to improving the business climate here in Minnesota.
Okay, yeah, that's a fairly we hear that from a lot of Republican candidates, especially out in the burbs. It's very true. I mean, it's the regulation, especially regarding health care and some of the other business regulations, especially the financial regulations. We were talking during the break about how Sarbanes-Oxley has added such an incredible amount of time and effort involved to developing anything in the financial services or healthcare industries. I mean, right. It's just the unintended consequences of their response to some of the financial scandals that happened over the last 20 years, and it's gone far overboard in terms of causing many more problems than it actually would have addressed, especially since it didn't actually resolve the problems that it was supposed to fix in the first place. So, good answers so far, gents. So let's talk a little bit about money here. We talked about the fundraising deadlines with Monique Jordana before the break about the need to hit this state subsidy to get the little the threshold of $1,500 for each house race to get your state subsidy. So how's the fundraising going, Brad Gerten?
Well, it's tough. You start with mailers, emails to known supporters. It trickles in. You've got the donate button on your website. You put remit envelopes so people could send in money. I'm getting close to that threshold, which is Monday midnight, I believe it is the deadline to hit that threshold of small donations of $50 or less from individuals to reach that 1,500.
For me, I'm so close I can taste it.
Oh, really?
I just need just that little bit extra. Just that little bit extra, and we'll be over the top, and we can put this to bed. And but just as Ms. Jordana said, the fundraising just doesn't stop there.
Oh no,
we need it. We need it to come in and keep it coming in.
Well, you're up against such a money machine. I mean, the DFL likes to paint themselves as the party of the little guy, but they sure fund their candidates like they're a bunch of Kardashians out there. So, I mean, hitting that $1,500 really is just the beginning. And, of course, getting back the whatever, $2,000, $3,000 that you get from the state certainly helps. But running a race in a burb that the DFL controls for the moment here, that's a $20,000 game here at the very least. $20,000, $30,000 needed to get through this bad boy.
At least. Yeah.
So how can people help out? Let's start with you, Brad. What's your website?
It's bradgerten.com.
Bradgerten.com.
BRADGERTEN.com. They can go on there. If you want to also volunteer, if you want a yard sign, if you live in the district, if you want to help with stuffing envelopes, you want to walk in the parade. Our next parade will be the fire muster in September in Burnsville, because my district spans Burnsville and Egan, parts of each city.
Right.
Any other ways they want to donate by making phone calls or whatnot? Any way they want to help out, I'm willing to put their volunteer hours to work.
Yeah, that's the thing that a lot of people don't get about these legislative races. I mean, there's a lot of just work that's one of the things that campaign managers tell people, even in the legislative races. If you, the candidate, are doing anything but getting votes, money, or media, and hopefully you're doing all three here today, sitting down here in the basement, then you're wasting your time. Someone else should be doing everything else, pounding signs, making phone calls, unless there's money involved. Do anything but those three things is basically something. If you're doing that, then your campaign needs to a fine tuning. So there's lots of these volunteer jobs, pounding signs, keeping track of where the signs are. Making the phone calls, doing setting up the fundraisers, doing all of these things.
Literature drops,
That's a big one. Obviously, hot on your guys' mind here today. That's what you guys are out doing today. Pat Hammond, how about your website?
HammondForHouse.com. HAMMOND for house. Very nice website.
Okay.
Go in there. Lots of donate buttons all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of volunteer buttons all over the place.
Absolutely. Well, I'll post both of these links at shotinthedark.info so we can get some people, too, in case you're not and of course, the big deadline is Monday. Getting to $1,500 is a huge help. What's this money go towards anyway? I mean, when people say donate, what's the big spend on these campaigns?
You've got the yard signs is a big expense. The literature, when you print it by the thousands, very big expense. If you do mailings, you're looking just for the postage. If it's in an envelope, you're looking at 47 cents per piece, plus the envelope and the literature inside. Just all adds up.
You have to realize that we're not a big national run organization here, so most of our money goes to local businesses. As far as the printing goes, as far as the yard signs go.
Good point.
As far as the delivery of the mailers. We don't concentrate too much on commercials.
Yeah,
or
would be much
or radio ads or anything like that. So they know that whatever you give us is going to be spent here in this district. So. Yeah,
absolutely. So no, that's an important thing. I mean, and of course I know friends in the printing business who look forward to political season with a mixture of fear and joy, because it's a lot of work, but it's kind of Christmas for them as well. So, Brad Gerten, your top goal, if you were to go to St. Paul, if heaven willing you were elected here, and hopefully you will be, what's your top goal? If you can get one thing accomplished in the legislature this upcoming session, the next session when you will be sworn in, and you want to accomplish one thing, what's it going to be?
Top goal. Because I have a lot of goals, but the top one would probably hold the line on the budget.
Yeah.
not just because we have a surplus doesn't mean we have to spend it on new programs.
Right.
Hold that line. Let's try to return that money to taxpayers when we have a surplus. And if people are so dead set on allowing that return, then let's put it down on infrastructure spending. Or I'd like to say it's one-time spending, but ultimately got to maintain it. But it's not the same as developing a new program that has to be funded in perpetuity.
Yeah, and we need 68 more people who believe that in the Minnesota House alone, and at least 37 in the Senate as well here. Pat Hammond, your number one top of the list accomplishment here, if you could pick one.
Targeted tax relief.
Okay.
I would target, the smaller businesses, the medium businesses. I would also target certain segments of the population. Senior citizens, release the tax burdens on their Social Security checks. Veterans, students with student loan debt should have a targeted tax refund for them or reduction. So I think that's probably one of the big things that I would be looking forward to do.
Can we keep you guys for one more segment here? We're going to
Sure,
get a little
absolutely.
more talk about the district here when we come back. Let's take your calls as well. 651-289-4488, the number to call. We're talking with Brad Gerten, who's running for the Minnesota House in District 51A, and Pat Hammond, who's running in District 51B. So if you have any questions or comments, you live in the neighborhood. My name is Mitch Berg. My blog, shotinthedark.info. Talking with Pat Hammond, running for the GOP. Well, actually has the GOP endorsed. You don't have a primary, do you?
No, I do not.
None of that nonsense
I
going on
am
here
endorsed,
in 51?
and I'm full running as the candidate.
Excellent. And no primary on the A side?
That is correct. Yeah,
Got over all
all
that
three
monkey
of us,
business?
yes.
Okay, good. Phew, man, don't want to deal with that anymore here. We were talking over the break about old radio, by the way, and I just thought you brought up just reminded me of something. Today is the 30th anniversary of me doing my first ever talk show at the old Evil Talk Empire back, and such confidence did the management at that station have in me at that time that they gave me the plum slot of 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. weekend mornings to do
When
my
everyone's
talk show.
listening.
That's right.
I was amazed how many listeners we had. I'd have like full banks of callers every night. They're all third shifters and drunks and cops and a few handicappers. All the handicappers at Canterbury Downs were all night owls, so all of them listened to me. They give me guff about it the next day. So it was 30 years ago today. I have to talk about that at some point.
Great way to cut your teeth.
Heck yeah, it certainly was. Best job I could have ever gotten out of college. So that was then. This is now. You guys are running for office here. So what's the next stop? You guys have been outdoor knocking, and of course that's the nature of retail politics in a place like Eagan and Burnsville. So what's the next stop on the campaign trail for you, Brad Gerten?
Well, more door knocking. I will be planning another fundraising event here within the next few weeks to happen within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Nothing's set yet, but that's another thing is trying to have fundraisers in your community or having people host small receptions so you can really have an opportunity to meet the people in the district,
Right.
answer their questions. You're at the door for 45 to 90 seconds, and sometimes that's just not the best
Right.
time to have a longer conversation about each other's views. So those receptions are good for campaigning, especially at this level. So those things will be planned here very shortly.
Okay, excellent. And Pat Hammond, your campaign trail.
Oh, that's the same. I could have said the same thing that Brad just did. I've had a couple of people come up and approach me about doing what they call cul-de-sac parties,
Okay.
where you go in and you spend 15, 20 minutes with everybody from the cul-de-sac and introduce yourself and discuss issues and policies, and then you continue on with the door knocking.
That's right.
You really learn what's important to
Yes.
your neighbors as well. Sometimes in your door knocking, they're asking about national and international issues, which we're running for state legislature. Well, we have views on those, but we're concentrating on what you mentioned, down the ticket, where it's really important to us.
Which I keep saying to people who are tuning out of the national race because they don't like either of the candidates, is like, don't tune out of this because, tune out of the national race if you want. Don't watch the convention. I don't care. But But it's these legislative races that affect your day-to-day life. It's what it affects your schools and your roads and your safety in the streets, and whether or not there's someone's going to drive some fool train down your street. That was decided at the state level and the local level. And if you have the wrong people elected, as you in Egan now do, it's curtains for you on that level as well. Here, that's where you have to stay engaged here, folks.
Yeah. And this year is every 12 years in Minnesota we don't have a statewide race. The governor and no U.S. senators on the ticket. So it goes from President of the United States, and then the next level down is your local congressman.
Right.
So this is a year where it is time to concentrate on your local issues. So
let's talk about the local campaign. We know what your opportunities are. We know what your campaigns are focusing on. In this year, dealing with the national electoral situation we have, I'll just put it diplomatically, for better or worse, doesn't matter whose side you're on, it's certainly making it a different electoral season than most. What is the biggest challenge you two guys are facing out there on the streets? Pat Hammond?
I haven't had really any kind of challenges that people have actually been upset about. Jobs and the economy, that's pretty much what I've been hearing. I have not heard anything about any kind of social issues.
Right.
I have not heard anything about any kind of national issues. It's been, how can we improve the jobs?
Right.
That's what they're really. It's like a laser focus.
Right.
Which
Brad
makes me very, very excited to hear.
Yeah. Brad Gerten?
Very similar. That social issues are not a big topic this election cycle. Unless you want to push some of the social issues in with some of the fiscal issues of
immigration's a social issue. Is that you hearing a lot about that here in Egan?
I have not personally, but I think the only thing you hear other than what we have a direct effect on if elected is the top of the ticket. But I hear just as much negativity on both sides and positivity towards both sides of the ticket. So to me, that's almost a wash.
Okay, all right. Well, Brad Gerten and Pat Hammond are running respectively for House Districts 51A and 51B in the greater Egan-Burnsville area. I love coming out to places like Egan because there's prosperity, there's order, there's a functional two-party system, so at least it's a fight to get the right thing done, which we don't get where I live. But it's time to push this thing over the top, and hopefully you two guys will be the ones to do it here, at least in the House of Representatives. That's direly, direly needed, especially in places like Egan. So, Brad, one more time, how can people find out more about your campaign and hopefully pony up a Jackson or two?
Go to bradgerten.com, and we have a donate button there. Also, you could follow me on Twitter at Vote Brad Gerten and Facebook, facebook.com/Vote Brad Gerten. But bradgerten.com is where you can donate.
And Pat Hammond?
It's Hammond for House. It's either, the website is hammondforhouse.com. The Twitter is Hammond for House, at Hammond for House. Okay. And the Facebook is Hammond for House. So
easy to remember, but I'll post it at Shot in the Dark anyway.
Okay.
Shotinthedark.info has all the links from everyone that we've talked about here today, so just in case you need it. And today, the timing, if you were to be able to pony up $10, $20, $50, the timing would be spectacular for both of you gentlemen. So if you've got a few bucks to spare, especially if you're in Egan, this is for the marbles, really. I mean, if there was a great time to flip this district back to the good side between the two of you gentlemen and Victor Lake, this would be a great time and a great opportunity potentially. So here's hoping people can pony up some time and money and hopefully a vote or two or a few thousand come this November. So, gentlemen, thanks for coming back on the air today. Best of luck. What's the next stop in the campaign trail for both of you, Brad?
I'm actually leaving here and going to door knock.
That's
okay.
Right out onto the street.
What's the goal for how many doors to hit in your districts this campaign?
Oh, about 15,000, wouldn't you say?
At
15,
least
20?
at
least that much.
Want to hit them? Want to try to hit them twice as well.
Yeah, that's right.
And I keep losing track. Which of you owns this station district-wise here? Is this the A side or the B side?
This actually falls in the B side.
Yes, it is.
A side goes to. It's easy to say the A side goes from 35W to 35E for the most part.
That's right.
I did not know that.
Anything east of 35E in Egan is the B side.
Okay, so we are west of 35E.
Oh, so that must be the A side.
East of Cedar. We need to talk about a little
Yeah.
district geography, gentlemen. You're just knocking on the doors. That's all right.
That's right.
We'll work that out
right.
here, folks. Either way, we need you to win this puppy. So, Brad
Yes.
Gerten and Pat Hammond, thanks for coming on the show here today.
Oh, Mitch Berg, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely,
We really
my
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
This is the fun part. Cheers. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
1280, the Patriot.
Hey, you could do this. Northern Alliance Radio Network, AM 1280. Don't go anywhere. We got one more segment to go, and it's going to be the best for last. I promise.